Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As I said in my previous video, I did manage to get a hold of the Battlezoo Ancestry book, so it's time to build us a dragon. So if you like what you see, like, subscribe, and ding that bell to be notified of future videos, and let's dive in. So dragons are usually known for one thing: power, whether that's through magic or unarmed attacks. But I wanted to know, how defensive can we get with a dragon? Today we're building a Paradise Dragon. This of course will give us a +1 bonus on saves against poison and petrification. Also, every time we succeed on a saving throw against a poison, we reduce its stage by 2 or by 1 for a virulent poison. Also, every time we critically succeed, we reduce the stage by 3 or 2 for a virulent poison. We aren't going to be gaining any breath weapon or our additional unarmed attacks. So, the only thing that matters for this heritage after that is that we can choose Constitution instead of Strength for our first ability boost. You could also choose Toadstool Dragon for this build. We are going to be gaining the Change Shape feat at the expense of our Dark Vision. Because, we don't want to be walking into town as a freaking dragon. That would be bad. So the light that the Toadstool Dragon generates may be useful depending on how many dark places the party ends up going to. However, for this build, we're going to go with Paradise Dragon to help us against poison and petrification. We don't want to take any more damage than we have to, and petrification takes us out of the fight completely, which is very bad for our allies. So Paradise Dragon will help us against both of those. And of course we're building for defense, and the best class for that is, of course, the Champion. And we're going with Paladin for our cause because, we always like extra attack whenever enemies try to hit our friends. For our deity, we want to worship Apsu. The worship of Apsu gives us a couple things for this build. First, it gives us the Jaws deific weapon. This will help us with our damage output. Secondly, it'll give us access to the protection domain, but I'll talk about that when I get to level 1 feats. And of course, for our background, we're picking up Haunted Citizen. This will give us the No Cause for Alarm feat. This will allow us to reduce the frightened condition on our allies once per hour. They do have to be within 10 feet of us, but we're going to be pretty big, so the chances of that are pretty high. For our starting ability scores, we're going to need a strength of 18 if we want to do as much damage to enemies as possible so that they have less chance to go after our allies. Then we want a dexterity of 12 so that we can have the highest armor possible. A constitution of 12, which will help our hit points, since we're a dragon and enemies are probably going to want to come after us, which is what we want. Then we'll need an intelligence of 10, a wisdom of 10, and a charisma of 16. We aren't going to need as much constitution as you'd think. First of all, we're a champion. We're going to have really high armor class. Secondly, we're going to be able to heal ourselves thanks to Lay on Hands. And lastly, thanks to one of our ancestry feats, we're going to be able to gain temporary hit points once a day for a round. So for our first level class feat, we're going to be taking Deity's Domain. And as I said before, we're going to want to pick up the Protection Domain here. This will give us the Protector Sacrifice Domain spell. This will allow us to absorb 3 damage per spell level from an ally. This is for those situations where we're not close enough to use Retributive Strike, but we are close enough to use this. This is just another way for us to protect our allies. And then of course we do get our Ancestry feat, which we're going to go with Sturdy Scales. This will essentially give us medium armor, but we don't have to spend money on actual medium armor. This means we can spend more money on consumable items like, say, healing potions and elixirs, which will help us with our healing even more than what we've already got. At level 2, we get 2 class feats. If you've got access to Knights of Last Wall feats, you're going to want to take Devoted Guardian here. This will give an ally a +1 to AC and whenever we raise our shield as long as they are adjacent to us. We need a shield for this build, that's why we're not taking the Draconic Diehard class archetype. Then of course on the free archetype side, we'll take our Draconic Ravager dedication. This will give us the additional unarmed attack feat, which we want to pick up for the tail. This will give us a bludgeoning unarmed attack to go with our piercing and slashing. Also, the damage from our unarmed attacks increases by 1 step. Then of course at level 3 we get our divine ally, which we're going to go with shield ally. This is going to increase our shield's hardness by 2 and its break threshold by 50%. We need this for some feats we're going to take later on. Also, this means that we can take less damage, which means we can better protect our team. Also at this level, we get our first general feat. And we're going to go with Ancestral Paragon for Collective Aid. This is just like the Cooperative Nature human feat. +4 to aid. However, this one does require Paradise Dragon or Toadstool Dragon, which is another reason why we should take Paradise Dragon here. At level 4, we get 2 more class feats. First, we're going to go with Aura of Courage. So whenever we become frightened, we reduce the frightened condition by 1. If our allies are also frightened, then at the end of our turn, we reduce the frightened condition of them by 1 extra. This combined with no cause for alarm from our background is going to make it very hard for opponents to fear the party for very long. And frightened is a very common debuff. So now we can very easily get rid of the frightened condition on our allies. And then on the free archetype side, we'll take Draconic Advance. This is essentially the sudden charge feat, but we have to use one of our dragon unarmed attacks with it. There is definitely a reason why champions don't normally get this feat. This will allow us to get right up in there into melee combat at the start of our turn. This doesn't even have the open or flourish traits, which effectively means we can use it to go between multiple enemies if we want, as much as we want. But we'll still probably only use this at the beginning of the turn. You'll find out why later. At 5th, we get our ability score increases and an ancestry feat. For our ability score increases, we'll want to increase our strength, con, wisdom, and charisma. Then for our ancestry feat at this level, we're going to go with Dragon's Endurance. This will give us temporary hit points equal to twice our level once per day for 1 round. Not only will this give us extra hit points for a round, but it'll also help offset the downside of Protector's Sacrifice. First at 6th, we'll take Shield Warden. This allows us to use Shield Block to help an adjacent ally. Our shield blocks damage for them instead of us, following the normal rules of shield block. Then we're going to need more AC than what we've got, so we're going to take Impenetrable Scales here. This will give us a +1 more to our AC. That might not seem like much, but it could be the difference between getting hit and getting crit. Plus, we're a champion, and we are proficient in heavy armor. Before I get into my first teamwork report of this video, let's talk about our 7th level general feat. We're taking Fleet. Since we have enough strength for our scales are only reducing our speed by 5 feet. Taking Fleet will allow us to basically ignore that speed reduction. So we can now move at full speed even though we're wearing heavy armor. This combined with Draconic Advance will really let us protect our allies. For my first teamwork report of this video, this build is going to work similarly to other champion builds. But we've got Draconic Advance. So if we happen to be far away from the enemy, like say 50 feet, we definitely want to use that on our first turn. If an ally is within 15 feet of us, we'll want to use our Retributive Strike. If they're within 30 feet of us, but not within 15, then we'll have to use Protector's Sacrifice. Aid whenever you can, so that you can get that +4 from Collective Aid. Finally, use Devoted Guardian and Shield Block together to really protect those adjacent allies. Overall, just protect your allies as much as you can while still doing good damage to the enemy. Okay, at level 8, we'll take Quick Block. This will give us an extra reaction, but we can only use it for shield block. This will allow us to protect even more allies than we were already doing. Then we'll pick up Scale Bulwark. This is to shore up one of the weaknesses of the champion, which of course is reflex saves. Our scales gain the Bulwark trait, meaning we get a +3 bonus to our reflex saves instead of our +1 dex. It's only against damaging effects, but most effects that require a reflex save are damaging effects. At 9th, we get an Ancestry feat, and we're going to go with Eternal Stride. Once a day, we gain 2 extra actions, but we can only use them to leap, stand, step, or stride. These 2 actions happen so fast that everybody else just sees a blur. They also can't take any actions while you're using this feat, including free actions and reactions that might be triggered by your movement. This will help us when the enemy is really far away, and if somebody wants to trip us or something, then we can get up without triggering reactions, which is very good. At 10th, ability score increases and 2 class feats. For our ability score increases, we want to increase the same 4 we did last time, which are of course Strength, Con, Wisdom, and Charisma. Then for our first class feat, we'll take Shield of Reckoning. This will allow us to shield block and use our champion reaction at the same time. This will allow us to prevent even more damage to our ally and hit them at the same time. Now on the free archetype side on this level, we'll take Empowered Size. This will increase our size to large and increase our reach to 10 feet. The bigger we are, the harder it is to get past us. So we need to be as big as we possibly can be. At 11th, we get a general feat, and we're just going to take Toughness for more hit points. At 12th, we'll take Adjust Size. We're going to be taking all the size feats, so sometimes we're not going to be able to fit through certain doorways that we need to be able to. So this will help us adjust our size to match. We can change our size to medium or any of the sizes granted by Draconic Ravager feats, because sometimes being large isn't a good thing. Speaking of size feats, next is Ancient Size. We become huge size, and our reach increases to 15 feet. Again, the larger we are, the harder it is to get past us. At 13th, Ancestry feat time. And we're going with Frightful Presence. Our allies may be resistant to fear, but our enemies are not. Thus, once per day, we can do a Frightful Presence to fear our enemies. Frightened is one of the best conditions in the game, and we want to put that on our enemies. This will make it even harder for enemies to hit us, or our allies. At 14th, we'll start with Draconic Frenzy. This will allow us to make 3 attacks for 2 actions. Now, we do still take the multiple attack penalty. However, with this feat, we might be able to take out lower level enemies rather easily. Plus, we need this in order to take the other feat at this level, so we might as well take it here. Speaking of which, next is Bullying Frenzy. We can now replace any of the strikes in Draconic Frenzy with grapple, shove, or trip attempts. Athletics is a great skill for making the foe flat-footed or for pushing them into hazards. Shove is especially useful if we have a trap ranger in the party. Shove them into that ranger's trap, why not? At 15th, ability score increases and a general feat. For our ability score increases, we're going to switch it up this time. This time we're going to be taking Strength, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. And for our general feat at this level, we're going to take Die Hard. So we die at dying 5 instead of dying 4. I do want to cover level 16 before I get into my second teamwork report. At this level, we'll start with Divine Wall. All the squares around us are considered difficult terrain for our enemies, so they move at half movement. They also can't step. With our max size being huge, if we're huge, then it's gotta be near impossible for enemies to get past us with this feat. If we're in melee with an enemy, they're not going anywhere. And we're going to be even bigger by the time we're done with this build. Then we'll take Ravager's Wings. With a fly speed equal to our speed, we can fly straight over the minions and go straight for that spellcaster boss in the back, if we want to. In the end though, we do want to go up against whatever enemy or enemies is the most threat to the party. And sometimes that enemy will be in the back past all the minions. So with this, we can bypass the minions and go straight for the biggest threat. So for Teamwork Report number 2, the strategy has changed slightly. So when we get into combat, we want to go straight for the biggest threat, as I said earlier. Whether that's by just moving and attacking, or using Draconic Advance. Either way, our third action is probably going to be to use Adjust Size. This will let us become as large as we possibly can be without hindering our party members. And because we are so large, we can take on multiple lesser minions at one time. And thanks to Divine Wall, they're going to have a really hard time getting past us. This in turn means that our spellcaster allies that are in the back are pretty safe from melee enemies. And other melee fighters that are fighting with us are safe thanks to our other champion feats, like Shield of Reckoning. And if enemies do somehow get too close to spellcaster allies, then we can trip, grapple, or even shove them. This will allow those spellcasters to get further away from those enemies rather easily. We can even do that as part of our Draconic Frenzy if we want. Okay, at level 17, we'll take Recurring Fear. This will allow us to use Frightful Presence once per hour instead of once per day. Fear is a great debuff, and we want to use it as much as possible. We can use Intimidation to fear our foes, but they have to roll against this. We don't have to roll anything. This is great against low will save opponents. And don't forget, we can also intimidate foes that are out of our aura as well. And then at level 18, we'll take Rejuvenating Touch. Whenever we heal someone with our Lay on Hands, they gain 10 temporary hit points at the start of their turn every round for the next 10 rounds. This will allow us to stay up longer, which in turn means better able to protect the party. Also, we only need to heal allies that are low on hit points one time, and they get back hit points every round after that. And then we'll take Worm's Size. This will make our maximum size gargantuan, and increase our reach to 20 feet. Again, while this doesn't affect any of our other statistics, the bigger we are, the harder it is to get past us. But it also might be difficult at this size for allies to hit enemies. That's why we took Adjust Size. We want to be as big as we can be without hindering our allies. At 19th, we get our last general feat, which is going to be Canny Acumen for our reflex saves. Now we're finally a master in reflex saves, which is really going to help us against those spellcasters. And finally, for level 20, we get our last 2 class feats. First up is Shield Paragon. First, our shield is always raised, even if we don't spend the action to raise it. Secondly, the HP and break threshold of our shield is doubled rather than increased by half. Finally, if our shield would be destroyed, it is instead repaired in our deity's home plane. It returns during your next daily preparations. This of course means that our shield can never fully be destroyed. And finally, we'll take Furious Momentum. This gives all of our unarmed attacks the Forceful trait, allowing us to do a bit more damage, which in turn gives our enemies even more of a reason to attack us over other party members. For Teamwork Report number 3, not much has changed. Granted, we can be gargantuan now. However, at that size, we may hinder allies. So we probably won't use that particular size very often. But we can now heal ourselves and allies even more thanks to Rejuvenating Touch. And finally, our shield is even harder to break now, and we do a bit more damage thanks to Furious Momentum. But overall, it's pretty much the same as it was for my last Teamwork Report. Be as big as we can be based on the terrain and not hindering allies. Use Lay on Hands when you're low on hit points. Basic champion stuff. By the way, our AC at this level should be 46 without our shield. It's going to be higher based on what shield you're using. And that's going to do it for this build. So until next time, remember, teamwork is vital.